Kyle was kind of looking still too, because it looked confusing.
Yeah. Okay. Are we recording now?
We've been recording.
Okay.
We're good to go, and we are.
Okay, so can we get started? And Arthur, you're going to see if anybody joins online. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We are here for the public information meeting on Monday, August 28th, 2023. This is first of the two meetings that we will hold in person and online. And the other meeting is going to be at 6 o'clock this evening. And this is about the amendments to several of our documents that we'll be discussing. And this particular, these amendments are going to be for consideration to both Technical Advisory Committee as well as Policy Board meeting during the September meetings, and we'll go over what the next steps are. Next slide, please. So today, for this meeting, we'll talk briefly about what is the MPO, what its role is. We'll also review carbon reduction program funding recommendations, all the plan and program amendments that we discussed, the public comment opportunities, and we'll also answer questions and look for questions and answers at the end of each of the discussion items, as well as at the end of this meeting. But before we begin with this, I would like to introduce everyone here in this room. My name is Mukesh Kumar. I am with the Waco Metropolitan Planning Organization. We also have Arthur on my left, Senior Planner with Waco MPO, Daniela Gallegos, Engagement Specialist, Nora, Senior Planner, Annette, Senior Planner, and Trey Yannick and Michael McDaniel, LJ consultants to TxDOT, and also Kyle Riley, consultants on the I-35 with TxDOT. With that, and we have two people who have joined in online. So next slide, please. So the Metropolitan Planning Organization we are a regional entity, and we provide local input into long-term regional decisions. In most cases, our role is driven by the 3C planning process: cooperative, continuing, and I always forget the very last one, and comprehensive. And so holding these 3 C's as the most important guide for us, we ensure that the regional transportation decisions reflect a vision that is shared by all the public agencies, as well as the cities and local governments. We typically engage in 2 sets of actions. One prioritizes the projects that have some reasonable chance of getting funded, and at the same time, we also program them so that these projects actually go ahead with their construction process. We also decide how the federal highway and transit funds are to be used within the region, and we also assist all the local governments as well as TxDOT in identifying the priorities that are driven by the regional vision. The last item that MPO engages, not the least though, is to guide how the transportation network needs to proceed and function for all different users. So to summarize this, we're engaged in a 3C process while paying attention to performance-based planning and while accommodating all different transportation modes. Next slide, please. MPOs are required for all urban areas that have 50,000 or higher population. Once an MPO reaches 200,000, it becomes a transportation management area. In our case for Waco MPO, we are just short of 200,000, so we are still considered a non-TMA. We have a 20-member policy board and a 19-member technical advisory committee. We are also assisted with 4 different work groups, including bike, pedestrian, connected automated vehicle, citizen participation, and mobility and land use work groups. Primarily, we coordinate and build consensus around particular projects that reflect the highest regional priorities. Next slide. This is an outline of the transportation planning process that we typically engage in, and almost everything we do fits a particular block somewhere. And as you can notice from here, that top half of this diagram shows the beginning from the regional vision all the way to the development of a transportation plan. And that process typically yields what we consider our long-range transportation plan, the MTP, that typically has a time horizon of about 25 years, which then further guides our short-range allocation, which is the Transportation Improvement Program. And in that particular one, we not only prioritize if we have to seek different priorities, but also allocate direct funding as the funding becomes imminent. And finally, we also monitor the performance largely based on our performance targets. And these go back into a feedback loop to further influence our regional visioning process, which we engage in every 5 years. And so for today, one of the important programs is the carbon reduction program. It's fairly new. And this is the first time we have allocated some funding. So it has triggered amendments to both our MTP as well as Transportation Improvement Program. And for this, we'll have Nora explain to us what carbon reduction program is.
The Carbon Reduction Program was established by the Congressional Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill in 2021 to reduce transportation emissions. And the Waco MPO plans to make $4.5 million available to local entities in the Waco planning area to implement those carbon reduction strategies over a 5-year period. The project funding will be awarded through a call for proposals. And the Waco MPO conducted its first call for proposals this year. There was approximately $2.1 million available for funding, and the policy board will consider awarding those funds on September 21st of this year. The carbon reduction project awards, there were eight proposals that were recommended for funding. They will award $1.3-ish million in federal funds for 5 proposals submitted by local project sponsors. That's made up of $434,785 in local match and about $1.8 million in total estimated costs. We'll award up to $1,058,160 in federal funds to advance sections of 3 projects from the MPO Active Transportation Plan. And there's a flexible strategy to address the $2.2 million in estimated available funding. Of those 8 projects, 5 of them were proposed by local sponsors. They include a project in McGregor for pedestrian activated crossing and crosswalk installation, a project in Waco for street tree installation at Mars Drive, a project in Waco for street tree installation at the MKT Trail, project for radar traffic trailer purchase in Beverly Hills, and a Waco Transit project for electric vans and software purchase for microtransit purposes. There are 3 projects that were selected or being recommended from our active transportation plan. One in Waco for sidewalk reconstruction on South 4th Street between Webster and Jackson Avenues. It's on the downtown plan as a priority. One in Waco for sidewalk addition on Ritchie Road between Park Meadows Subdivision and West Warren Street, and that was endorsed by the Waco Police. And one in Waco to add and improve sidewalks on Clay Avenue between South 3rd and South 8th Streets. It's also on the downtown plan priority and includes tree installation.
So if there are any question online or anywhere or in this room, we can discuss them now. We also have options for comments and ideas. And at the same time, we also have the option to discuss these projects at the end of this meeting as well. We'll move to the next portion of it related to Metropolitan Transportation Plan. This is our long-range transportation plan that requires amendment. And so we'll have Annette explain to us the amendments we're proposing for both the Metropolitan Transportation Plan and the Transportation Improvement Program.
So the Waco MPO develops a long-range transportation plan every 5 years or so. And so the current MTP that we're talking about amending today was the 2045 plan, and it identifies the regional transportation goals and projects to be constructed or implemented by 2045. It includes regionally significant projects from each mode: highways, public transportation, aviation, rail, bike ped projects. As a requirement for the MTP is that any highway or transit projects that propose to use federal dollars must be included in the MTP. Projects must be constrained against a realistic estimate of future revenues. And as all our plans, the public input guides the development of these. Go ahead. Next slide, please. So today we're going to be talking about a proposed amendment 4 to our current MTP. It's the reasons or the purpose for this amendment are threefold. It's to reflect a Texas Transportation Commission priority, to reflect new funding that has become available in this region, and also to reflect refinements to planned projects. If you look at the transportation planning graphic to the right, you can see where we are, kind of the development of the transportation plan. Well, clearly this plan has been around for a few years, and this is a amendment, a fourth amendment that is being proposed. The other three have happened over the last couple of years as a result of like new feedback or new funding. So we just kind of wanted to show you where we were in that plan. So to talk about that, the commission priority is the construction of our I-35 4C project. This project follows the 4B project, which ended downtown at about 12th Street. And so this 4C project is from about 12th Street on I-35 to State Highway 6 or South Loop 340, which is down close to the Baylor Scott and White Hospital. And it would be adding, reconstructing bridges and frontage roads and construction of new frontage roads in a couple of places. We can talk about that later. We can detail that. And if you have any questions, please ask at the end of this presentation. The other thing is to reflect new funding, which is through the carbon reduction program, and also a grant program through Federal Transit Authority, which is the low no emission vehicle program. It's a grant that Waco Transit received this year. Also, as TxDOT is engaged in the engineering, the design of projects, there are revisions that come up or that need to be revised. They're significant enough that we need to revise them in the MTP to reflect those changes. Next slide. So talking about I-35 4C, this is a Texas Transportation Commission priority. It has been for a while. However, in their guiding plan, which is the 2023 Unified Transportation Program, which was just adopted a week ago or so on October 16th, it makes the funding for I-35 possible. So TxDOT's Financial Management Division estimates that revenue will be available to TxDOT to begin construction in 2024. Next slide. And so in order to reflect a Waco MPO's commitment to this project, we're proposing an amendment in the MTP to reprioritize this project from the long-term priority to the highest short-term priority in the MTP. So that action is the actual action is that we'll revise short-term and long-term priorities in Strategy 5 to reflect the new prioritization. And Strategy 5 in our MTP is a future mobility. We're addressing that demand. Another action that will be required is to align the estimated project implementation costs with those identified in TxDOT's 2023 ETP. It requires a revised scope of work and a revision to the estimated cost. So the result is that it increases the project cost from 250 million to 274 to almost 275 million. And it adds 274 to almost 275 in short-term priorities to the whole MTP, and it removes 250 million in long-term priorities from the plan. Next, thank you. Next, we'll talk about the carbon reduction strategy, the Waco MPO. Nora talked about that already. So for this, so the need that we have in the MTP is to award, is actually to revise the short-term priorities in strategy 4, which to add that 2.1 million of fiscal year 2024 carbon reduction funds that are allocated to the Waco MPO, and the just under 700,000 of required non-federal local match to fund the project implementation. So so this adds about 2.8 million in short-term priorities to the plan. Next slide, please. Okay, thanks. Didn't even see it. Thanks. And so there was another strategy or another plan, I'm sorry, is that we need to revise the MTP, is because the Waco Transit received or is receiving a transit low or no emission grant award this year. That program is a greenhouse gas emission reduction strategy. This program is a competitive, it awards competitive federal funds for acquiring zero and or low emission transit vehicles. And Waco Transit received a grant to purchase 4 battery electric vehicles and chargers. So the action that we're speaking about today is to revise those short-term priorities in strategy 6 to add 3.1 million of federal 5339C funds awarded to Waco Transit and 546,000 of required non-federal local match. This adds 3.7 million in short-term priorities to the plan. So as we spoke about, revisions come about through the project planning and design process. So this MTP amendment will align revised scopes of work, project limits, and project costs with those identified within the engineering design phase per TxDOT Waco District. There's basically 2 actions: revising short-term priorities in strategy 2 and in strategy 5, and affects 4 projects that are detailed in the next slides. So the first project is the US 84 project. TxDOT has asked that we revise our extent, scope of work, and estimated costs of this project. Those are detailed in the MTP plan, and this amendment is posted. And I don't think we talked about where it's posted, but you can find it on the MTP. Daniela, help me. It's on the site. If you go to meetings and you click on today's meeting, it is detailed there with the MTP amendment. So you can follow along if you'd like to. Anyway, this increased the project cost of the 84 project from 72 million to 179 million approximately. It adds 107 million in short-term priorities. And then there's a companion project identified as a new ramp project for this MPO. It's from SPUR 298 to Lake Air Drive. And so basically this adds all of the project details for this project, including the extent, scope of work, and estimated costs to the plan. It's estimated at 8 million. So it adds 8 million in short-term priorities to the plan. Also, the SPUR 298 project, which locals know as Franklin Avenue. It's the project from US 84 to State Loop 396, Valley Mills Drive. The request is to revise the extent, the scope of work, and estimated costs. So this project is increased in cost from 38 million to 40 million. So basically it adds 2 million in short-term priorities to the plan. A State Highway 6 project is from SPUR 412, which is McLaughlin Road, to FM 185 for our locals. This is the crossroads intersection, basically. And so it's a revision in estimated cost And this actually is a decrease in project costs from what was anticipated at first to be 80 million project to a 28 million project. So it removes about 52 million in short-term priorities from the plan. So the total cost of this proposed amendment is 38.4 million. The amendment increases the short-term priorities in the plan by 288.4 million and decreases the long-term priorities by 249 million. So the total cost of the long-range plan recommendations after the amendment is 2.23 billion. And the previous cost was about 2.2 billion. So if there's any discussion, if there's any questions or comments or ideas, please let us know. If you're online, you can just raise your, use the chat option, raise your hand. If anyone in the room has questions, please ask. Otherwise, we'll just we'll take comments at the end of the whole presentation. All right, we'll move on to the Transportation Improvement Program and a proposed amendment to the TIP. So what is the Transportation Improvement Program? Well, as Mukesh alluded to before, it programs funding, once it's been identified, for all federal highway, public transportation, pedestrian projects for the Waco region for the next 4 years. Engineering right-of-way acquisition, construction phases, any public transportation services. So in order to be included in the TIP, projects must be identified in the long-range transportation plan. Projects must be fully funded, and right-of-way projects must have necessary engineering studies complete, and construction projects must have right-of-way acquisition in progress and engineering studies complete to be included in the TIP. So the purpose and the need for this amendment is to provide consistency with the 2045 MTP. Much of what you're going to see in this amendment was also in the MTP amendment. So it will bring, if the MTP amendment is indeed passed by the policy board, then this would follow on its heels and actually program that funding. So the program identified for federal highways, public transportation, pedestrian projects within the Waco region is programming all of that funding. So the purpose for this amendment is to program the I-35 4C construction, the transit vehicle purchase that will be made possible through the Low Note grant fund that Waco Transit received, to program carbon reduction strategies. If you're following along in the documents, that's in Appendix F, and the design revisions to the highway projects. Also, as a FAST Act requirement, we'll update performance targets, which you can find in Appendix G. So the first reason, or the first, action is to program identified funds for IH-35 4C into the fiscal year 23-26 TIP as requested by the TxDOT Waco District. The revisions are highlighted in section 1.2 of Amendment 1 and Highway Financial Summary if you are following along in that document. The amendment will also program the federal and state funds awarded through the supplementary programs. The first program of funds awarded to Waco Transit through the low or no emission program. And those revisions are highlighted in section 1.3 of the amendment and in the transit project description and the transit financial summary of Amendment 1 as well. So, and then the second action is a program of funds awarded to local entities by Waco MPO through the carbon reduction program. And this, if you're following along in the amendment, the CRP awarded projects are grouped to provide an efficient method of programming and letting projects and to decrease the necessity for tip stick revisions. Those revisions are highlighted in section 1.4 and the appendix F of amendment 1. Just to remind you that low no emission program was a competitive grant and the carbon reduction program is a formula grant. The other is the program project adjustments that we spoke about in the MTP amendment discussion. They're necessitated by the design and engineering process requested by TxDOT Waco District. And the regional projects currently programmed for engineering, right-of-way acquisition, and construction phases. There's a few projects we'll talk about in just a minute. The revisions are highlighted in section 1.2 and the highway financial summary of amendment 1. And the regional projects currently undergoing environmental assessment. If you're following along, those revisions are highlighted in appendix D of amendment 1. So the details follow. So the action will be to program adjustments to project limit, scope of work, and our project costs to Highway 84, the Hewitt Drive to SPUR 298 project, which is included in the tip right now for engineering and right-of-way phases. The US 84 project we talked about from Franklin to Lake Air Drive, that project will program that project into the tip, the engineering phase. Also to SPUR 298, the Franklin Avenue from US 84 to Valley Mills Drive. This is included already in the tip. The engineering and right-of-way phases are included, just makes adjustments. State Highway 6, McLaughlin Road to from the Market 185. This is also included already in the tip, the engineering phases. And the engineering phase of the State Highway 31 overpass project at Farm to Market 2311. It just revises it slightly, and that project is included in the engineering phase already. Next slide. And then also performance targets. Just for those of you members of the public who might not be familiar with this, the progress of implemented mobility strategies are measured against performance targets to assess strengths and weaknesses of those strategies that we've implemented, and periodically, and that's statewide and regionally, periodically the targets may be adjusted to improve performance and the expected impact of projects. So there's an action to update Appendix G, which lists each of our performance targets to reflect the revised performance targets that our policy board has adopted over the last year and a half, and how those new programming, how the new programming will assist in achieving targets. It includes revisions to the targets supported by the Waco MPO policy over the past year. It's probably been more like a year and a half at this point, and in accordance with FAST Act requirements. And the revisions are highlighted in section 1.5 and appendix G of amendment 1. So if there's any questions, if you're going along with the amendments, if you're looking at them online, if you have any questions or comments or ideas, please ask them now. You all are pretty familiar with this. Don't see anybody asking questions yet, so we'll have another chance at the end of the total presentation.
The last set of amendments we're going to talk about relates to our current unified planning work program. And this is, can you move to the next slide, please? We are currently operating under fiscal year 2022-2023, which ends on September 30th. And that's our operating budget document that outlines all the work that we intend to do using federal dollars for planning purposes. In this particular case, we also estimate the amount of federal planning funds that will be available, as well as we identify how the MPO intends to accomplish each task that is outlined into this document and how we use the total funds. Next slide, please. The only amendment we are going to be making is necessitated by the need to complete a low zero emission propulsion study infrastructure assessment and transition plan as it relates to the fleet of Waco Transit System. And this is requested by Waco Transit System, and this adds additional cost of $86,000 to the current year budget, of which $64,761 are federal and $21,587 are the local funds. That's the only amendment we are proposing for the UPWP. And at this point in time for the UPWP, similar to the previous one, if you have questions, please raise them now. We do have the public comment period open all the way till September 20th. You can make any comments until that point in time when we compile all the comments and present it to the policy board. So any comments so far? So public comment will, it started on August 21st. It will go on till September 20th, and we can accept the comment in any of the any language, thanks to Google, as well as our in-house Spanish expert. And so we're delighted to be able to accept that. We can accept comments on the MPO website, email, Facebook, or you can call us as well. Our public meeting, this is the first of the two meetings. The second meeting will be at 6 p.m. at the same location, and we have a Zoom link for that as well. And these presentations are being recorded, and we'll post them on our website and will be available until September 20th. Next slide. The next steps are that the Technical Advisory Committee is going to be meeting. Technical Advisory Committee actually, this is the previous background information. On June 1, it accepted the carbon reduction funding recommendations from the evaluation team, and it will review the anticipated plan and program amendments to the MTP TIP and UPWP. And at this point in time, at that time, it recommended to seek the public input. On Thursday, September 7th, it will consider the public input that we receive until that point in time, and it will recommend actions to the MPO policy board based on that regarding carbon reduction program awards, as well as the proposed amendments. After that, on Thursday, September 21, policy board will meet for a public hearing, as well as taking decision on the amendments. Next slide. And so for any question, comments, and ideas, those are our phone numbers. Our phone number is 254-750-5650. You can email us at mpo@wacotx.gov. Our Facebook is at City of Waco Tex, as well as our LinkedIn page for Waco MPO is also where we can accept comments. As we mentioned earlier, we can accept comment in any language, and comment cards are accessible on the MPO website in the Get Involved section, where if you would like to inform us of not only of your comments, but if you want to directly contact us with any idea, we seek, and we also ask for your permission to post your comment online once you send it to us. So any question or comment online? This is the end of our presentation. Any question or comment in the room? Then this will end our presentation for today, and we will reconvene at 6 p.m. this evening. Thank you.